for sure. And before we wrap, I just wanted to kind of get everyone's thoughts on this so-called maritime corridor and this, very vaunted plan by the U.S. To build a pier. We kind of discussed it last week, talked about the theatrics of it, how it's, a total uh, just farce. They won't pressure Israel to open the crossings to let these thousands of aid trucks in, but they're going to do this dramatic, theater of building some sort of port that will take months. What do we know about the port and about uh, just how this is all kind of faring?
Well, I want to point to what Wala said when we spoke to Wala Sabah earlier in the live stream, and she pointed to the suspicions that Palestinians in Gaza have about this, and I would say Palestinians more generally outside Gaza have about this. And in recent days, the very well-known Palestinian commentator Abdel Bari Atwan, for example, has been expressing a lot of these fears and concerns. I mean, the basic question is, why do you need a maritime corridor? As we've pointed out when we talked about these symbolic airdrops last week, or these public relations stunts airdrops last week, why do you need to do airdrops when there is 2,000 trucks fully loaded stuck at the Rafah crossing solely because Israel doesn't want them to come in to Gaza? And what is making people even more suspicious is the fact that Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister and the architect of the starvation policy, remember it was Yoav Gallant on October 9th, who announced that they were cutting off food, water, medicine, everything to the so-called human animals in Gaza. Why would he welcome this maritime corridor, which is what he did a couple of days ago? And he let the cat out of the bag. He said that this is going to be basically Israel's way of replacing UNRWA, the UN agency for Palestine refugees that Israel has been trying to destroy in the United States, and its allies have been helping them by defunding it. So I would say a lot of the suspicions. Oh, the other thing is that the Americans have said they're sending the Navy or U.S. forces to build this floating offshore port or whatever it is, but there will be no U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza. But you have to have someone on the ground to unload and process and distribute this aid. And we already know Israel doesn't want it to be UNRWA. So who is it going to be? And in this context, it's been announced that the aid is going to be coordinated with the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. But it's unspecified what the UAE's role will be. Will they be funding it, or will they be providing boots on the ground? So there is a lot of suspicion that this is really a Trojan horse to create basically a bridgehead to introduce an alternative collaborationist government to Gaza, hearkening back to some of the early talk of the so-called day after, when it was mooted that so-called Arab peacekeeping forces might be brought in. None of this has been announced or clarified, just to make that clear. But this is the suspicions that this is raising, and this is what's being talked about among Palestinians. And I think it was in the Washington Post that American officials have said that even if this port were fully up and running, it would be able to process at a maximum, again, this is assuming everything goes perfectly, at a maximum the equivalent of 200 truckloads of aid per day, which we know is far, far short of what's needed. And this would not stop a famine from happening. And that's assuming it happens. And it's not going to happen for at least 2 months from what we've heard. So And then finally, another fear is that it is going to be used, if it is set up, to bypass the Rafah crossing, to basically cut Gaza off completely by land from Egypt and to replace the one land crossing to the outside world with a sea crossing that is totally under American and Israeli control and the control of collaborators of the United States and Israel and enemies of the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
So that's what, rather than generating appreciation or relief that more aid is coming in, this thing has only raised a lot more questions and fears. And that's some of what Wala alluded to.
John, did you want to chime in about the port? Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
just the 200 trucks a day is less than half of what the siege levels were before the war.
Yeah.
So even if that were to be the case, it doesn't appear to be a beneficial. It feels as though they're just making this stuff up as they go, because these American soldiers are on their way over, 500 of them, to rig up this pier that has to attach to the shoreline in Gaza. So this idea that there won't be boots on the ground just presumes some sort of force accepting these soldiers and building the pier with them. They haven't even declared the ship that left from Cyprus. They haven't even declared where it's going to arrive on the beach. They haven't declared the position where the dock is going to be implemented. And like you said, it's going to be 60 days before that. And people are dying today. And there's trucks that you could literally open the border and allow hundreds and hundreds of them to come in immediately. If this is theater, it's the most grisly type of theater while people are starving to death. It's really astonishing because.
And it may well be theater, but let's remember that these plans or ideas for a port as an alternative to ending the siege, but a port that would be under Israeli control, date back several years. And you remember towards the beginning of this genocide, the Israeli minister, I think it was Israel 𝐓𝐡𝐞, who talked about building an island off Gaza, a floating island. And people said, oh, they want to exile Palestinians to a floating island. I don't think that's actually what he meant. I think he meant something like this, where a maritime corridor with an offshore element, whether that be an artificial island, a floating island, or whether it be Cyprus as a terminal, become the only outlet for Gaza and its people to the outside world, with the understanding that it is under the full control of Israel and other genocidal enemies of the Palestinian people, including the United States and the European Union. So I think there is an element of their making it up as they go along, but they're also bringing up ideas that or looking around and saying, well, what do we already have in the in tray that's an idea that we can revive? And there was actually even a report in the Jerusalem Post yesterday, I think, saying that this idea of the port was actually an Israeli idea that came from Netanyahu to Biden. And as I mentioned, Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, is saying this will be how we replace UNRWA. So it's one of those things where there's a lot that is unclear, but there is enough background to this. And again, with plans going back several years, to be really concerned that they are trying, that this is another attempt to control Gaza's fate long-term under the really cynical and cruel guise of humanitarian aid.
Oh, it's grotesque.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.